Good day, everyone. It is a great pleasure to welcome you. The International Republican Institute is very excited about this event. We are pleased to join the German Marshall Fund in welcoming you to the launch of Going Digital, a playbook for legislatures. I'm Scott Mastick, Vice President for Programs at IRI. I want to thank you for joining us today and thank GMF for co-hosting. I also want to acknowledge our honorable and esteemed elected members of parliament from Maldives, Armenia, Colombia, North Macedonia, and Ecuador, who are with us today and from whom you will hear in just a bit. In a moment, I'm going to turn over to the two main authors of the playbook, Amanda Zink and Brittany Beaulieu, to introduce the playbook. And after that, we're going to hear from Jonathan Katz, the Director of Democracy Initiatives at GMF, who will lead a moderated conversation with our distinguished group of parliamentarians about their own experiences in taking their work online over the last year. Why, what worked, and what didn't. Before that, however, just a few thoughts on the rationale behind the playbook and why we think this conversation is so important. IRI works in over 100 countries around the world, supporting those who protect and advance democracy. Core to that mission is elected representative bodies, from parliaments to city councils, that hold executive branches to account and ensure that government serves the people. During the last year, as COVID forced all of us online, it became clear that legislatures were absolutely essential to combating executive overreach that we have seen and continue to see in a number of places. Often with COVID as a veiled pretext to limit civil liberties and the rights of citizens. Also though, the swift move to the digital space revealed that many legislatures were uniquely ill-equipped to move their operations online. Between various rules requiring in-person votes, security concerns, and the complicated politics of deliberating and drafting legislation, not to mention the unique and different layers of organizational bureaucracy, legislatures were at risk of being unable to function at precisely the moment when they were needed most. The pandemic highlighted the dangers of failing to securely digitize or modernize operations, and at first created a near standstill in many legislative functions. Public service delivery was negatively impacted, IT systems were compromised, civil liberties were threatened, and many authoritarians were emboldened to pass sweeping emergency orders that further centralized power. Recognizing this emergent threat to democratic systems, IRI went to work to support legislatures to adjust operations over the course of 2020. And as a result, we saw a number of best practices emerge from around the world. Herculean feats from parliamentarians like those you will hear from in this event mean we now have a better sense of what it means to digitize parliamentary operations. Those feats have not only meant continued functioning. In some instances, digitization has led to more accountability, greater inclusivity, and improved responsiveness and interaction with citizens. This playbook represents the best of what we've collectively learned over the past year and in the context of COVID, but we believe its application will extend far beyond COVID. IRI sees the playbook as a critical piece of our efforts to support and guide legislatures seeking to securely shift at least some of their operations online, as well as a useful resource for those legislatures seeking to safely future-proof their institutions, including their IT systems through digital means. With that, I will turn it over to Amanda and Brittany, who authored this practical guidebook, to provide a short overview of the guide's key highlights. And thank you again for your interest in this incredibly important topic. Amanda, Brittany.
Thanks so much, Scott, and thanks for kicking this off for us. I just want to take a few moments to provide an overview of the topics covered and how we structured them within the playbook. So our goal was to organize the playbook in a way that first guides legislatures from the very basics of digitizing operations, such as thinking through how to adjust rules and procedures and how to select appropriate and secure software and hardware, to more complex guidance on how digital tools might be implemented for critical legislative functions. We've organized the information within the playbook into 5 key areas, which I'll briefly run over. First, we run through examples and guidance for adjusting rules and procedures to enable digital operations. Second, we run through best practices and considerations for securely setting up software, hardware, and infrastructure. Third, an overview of key tips to ensure and maintain cybersecurity throughout all legislative operations. Fourth, best practices and tools for ensuring the continuation of core functions of the legislature, including authoring, drafting, and introducing legislation, facilitating internal communication, and conducting committee meetings and hearings online, including committee functions like debate, voting, and oversight of the executive. And then finally, the playbook concludes with guidance on communicating and working with constituents. This includes an overview of accessible tools to use in constituent outreach and best practices for messaging during a crisis. So throughout the playbook, we've taken care to weave in case studies to provide examples of how legislatures all around the world have digitized one or even more of their own operations. So with that, it's my pleasure to now hand it over to Brittany to speak a little bit more about those examples we included.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Amanda. As Amanda mentioned, we've woven in case studies and best practices from across the globe to show how legislatures at both the national and subnational levels have successfully digitized operations. To give you a quick update, one of those case studies highlights the rapid response of the city of Dnipro in Ukraine. Despite never having conducted online operations before, the City Council rapidly decided to draft and approve needed regulatory changes to allow for remote operations, while simultaneously coordinating trainings for the local elected officials on how to use Zoom. As a result, the City Council was able to rapidly shift online and was able to collaborate and vote to allocate needed funds for purchasing additional medical equipment, masks, and gloves. This is just one of many great and inspiring examples of how digitizing operations can be so critical to enabling the continuation of key functions during a crisis. You'll hear many more from our panelists shortly. I would like to emphasize that we truly hope for this document to be collaborative and to represent not just the research of IRI and GMF, but also the knowledge we've gained as a global community over the course of the past year. We encourage you all to reach out with any further examples, best practices, or lessons learned that we might be able to add to the playbook. Lastly, I'd like to note that IRI's sister organization, the National Democratic Institute, is also currently working to develop an even more comprehensive cybersecurity playbook for legislatures that should be released in the near future. As Amanda mentioned, we do touch on cybersecurity throughout our playbook, but NDI's upcoming resource will serve as a very useful complement to what we've covered. So please keep your eyes peeled for its release. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Jonathan so we can hear from our distinguished panel.
Brittany, thank you so much. And Scott, thank you for that introduction. Both, I just want to congratulate Brittany, you, Amanda, IRI, which is such a great partner for the German Marshall Fund, always. Thank you so much for pulling this together. It's been quite a year plus. And I know a lot of the representatives here are in countries that are still dealing with some serious challenges. So thank you so much for joining in the middle of very busy schedules. Also, I know we're all in different time zones as well. So thank you for joining so late in everybody's day as well, or good morning for those who are joining in our same time zone as Washington, D.C. This playbook is really so important. And I think Amanda and Brittany and Scott pointed out all of the reasons behind why this is needed today for COVID, why it will probably be needed in the near future in the different applications. So I think we're really I know I was excited when I heard about this project. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to join IRI and thank them and Brittany for the opportunity to speak. But I think the main goal here today is, as Brittany mentioned, is speaking to actual legislators, members of parliament from around the world that are actually, working day to day, actually carrying out the activities of governing. And as a former congressional staffer, having worked for many years, including with Brittany, I understand how important it is, particularly as Scott pointed out, that in the middle of COVID, that executive branch, which would be in the US and globally, have really, and governments have really taken control in many ways and have instituted new measures, some of which have been disconcerting. Some have been really important and needed, and we're all struggling to figure our way out. It doesn't matter if you're in Washington or if you're in Colombia, or if you're in North Macedonia. We're all sort of in this boat together. So with that said, and since we have this Playbook digital tools that we're talking about today, and how these initiatives have addressed challenges, improved operations for legislatures, not only at the national level, but local level, I wanted to just quickly introduce the panelists. I also, this part of the program is also going to include questions and discussions directly with those that have joined, those MPs that have joined, but also we're going to have a Q&A session where audience can weigh in. And so there's a Q&A button on Zoom, and feel free at any point in time to just weigh in with a question, and we'll do our best with so many great panelists to answer and respond to your questions. So I'm just going to mention the names of everybody participating, because we have some great questions, and also we really want to get really into the weeds of what has been done. So I want to just welcome MP Jihan Mahmood from the Maldives. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think you get the gold medal for participating from the time zone that's furthest away. We also have Sos Vetsian, who is an Armenian MP, Jose Daniel Lopez from Colombia, also an MP. Basir Stojcevska, who's with an MP from North Macedonia, who is joining us. Thank you and for joining us. I know I can see we're driving. We'll try to make sure that you're as safe as possible. And Natalie Arias, who's an MP from Ecuador, who will be joining as well. All of them are committed MPs, have been working through the COVID crisis. Each are bringing in their own experiences, both from the committee level or parliamentary level. And so what we wanted to do, Jihan, is to turn to you first. I want to hear a little bit more about how the People's Majlis of Maldives responded to the COVID pandemic. I think you have some specific efforts that you undertook as the chair of the Parliamentary Committee on Human Rights and Gender, if I have that right, and ensuring that the committee adopted new digital tools, and you thought about inclusion in digital operations. Can you talk about what the efforts and initiatives that you led that were put in place? And I want to just sort of congratulate you and sort of all the parliamentarians, really just point out such an important role through such a difficult period. And so, Jihan, can I turn it over to you, maybe to talk about your experience, your work, successes, and maybe just talk about some of the challenges that you faced, and you and your colleagues.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. Please do let me know if you don't. So the Maldives Parliament went digital really early on. I am told by the Interparliamentary Union that we might have been one of the first countries to go digital early on in March 2020. One of the first things that the Maldives Parliament did was adapt and amend our standing orders, allowing for online voting, allowing for online meetings, allowing for online debate, online speaking. And what we had to, the committee, my committee and the committee members what we had to initiate was the opportunity for the standing committees to operate similarly to that of the Parliament and go online and digital to continue our services as the committee. For us, especially during COVID, we felt that, and we were convinced that this is not a time for a Human Rights and Gender Committee to go out of work. And so we worked with the Parliament and the Speaker and found a way for us to adapt similar softwares, technical assistance as the Parliament itself, the whole Parliament, the plenary was using, which is Teams and poly-voting. And we kept the committee going, and we're still going. It was just last month that we've started holding physical meetings here in Maldives. So we've continued online digital committee meetings throughout the pandemic, inspired by the plenary of the whole Parliament. And of course, we had a lot of challenges. A lot of times, the issues that we deal with are pertain to children, pertain to women in difficult and vulnerable positions, pertain to persons with disabilities, it pertains to the elderly, the most vulnerable of the vulnerable, the migrant workers also considering that Maldives is a receiving country, and we have a lot of migrant workers who are struggling, who are still struggling through the pandemic. And so the effort of the committee was to instantly analyze the existing policies or the response to COVID, the policies that were in place to respond to COVID, and we analyzed it from a human rights perspective, and we tried to ensure that there's inclusivity at the national level, starting with the policy, with the services and response to COVID, and making sure that services to these vulnerable groups are uninterrupted. And so the Parliament the Committee on Human Rights and Gender have been working throughout the year. The other thing that we had to think about was public consultation, how to conduct consultation and keep the public dialogue during the pandemic, especially on issues pertaining to vulnerable groups, and especially on issues relating to persons with disabilities. We adopted two methods. One was that I made sure that I had special permission from the Speaker and the Parliament to hold one-on-one meetings as much as possible without the whole committee, just with myself and the rights holder, rights bearer, the victim, so that I can bring back to the committee first-hand information, first-hand testimonies, and evidence-based information. And so that meant that I had to work parallelly while the committee, parallelly physically, while the committee also worked online. The other option was also that we adapted was allowing for persons with disabilities and for children to appear in committee if and when needed with a person they trusted and a person who can assist of their choice. And so just to make sure that we do not lose our touch with the victims before seeking the assistance of the committee, and our online public, our dialogue and our dialogue with the public, and trying to keep it as robust as possible under very difficult circumstances. I must note that there's a decrease in number of people attempting to work with the committee online. Obviously, there are so many digital challenges that the Parliament can't resolve for many people in the public. And given the very challenging geographic situation of the Maldives. We are 1,190 islands scattered across the Indian Ocean. So people are scattered across 200 plus islands, inhabited islands. And so reaching out to them and for them to reach out to us was definitely a challenge. So it was not as robust as we wanted it to be. But the standing orders, the regulations that we put in place, the amendments made sure that we had some way for them to contact us and for us to be in touch with them, especially via councils, the local councils. Another challenge that I will just make this very short, was that I became a high-risk parliamentarian during the process. I was pregnant most of last year, so which meant that I had to think about parliamentarians in that situation, because obviously, well, Maldives is it's a parliament of 87 parliamentarians with 83 male and just 4 female parliamentarians. And so the standing orders had not thought about this scenario. So the regulations had not thought about, first of all, it had not thought about a female parliamentarian becoming pregnant. And it had not thought about, obviously, no one was prepared for a parliamentarian as a high-risk patient in a COVID situation. So adapting how, not just how I worked, but also how my staff who were female, who were already pregnant, and people who could be working with how they would work in a situation like this. So really insisting on online, as much as online consultation, online meetings, online committee hearings for the staff, and adapting the parliamentary standing orders to cater to this very unique situation as well was a challenge, but something that we kept in mind and something that we adapted to and somehow just managed to bring into the formula. And it has been a rough experience, but it has been one that has changed so many perspectives on what we could actually do with our, not just the rights bearers and rights holders and our constituencies, but also so many policymakers, politicians, other politicians, and other powers of the state, such as the government, on holding them accountable. So oversight was something that we just did not think that we could let go of during such a difficult time. So yes, basically, I would like to just end my remarks here and just thank the IRI for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think pretty amazing work that you've done, and colleagues, and I think you touched on so many issues that I'm sure when I see Amanda, Brittany, sort of having authored this, that I think they're probably thinking through too, which is you bring up some issues. One is in sort of inclusion in these spaces, gender, but I also, something that we sometimes we don't think about. One is geographic, in the context of you reaching out, and also the constituency that, it's not only about, it's legislatures that hold the executives, typically to account, but it's also constituencies that are the ones that are the end users and the ones that are impacted by all of these laws, specifically in the middle of a pandemic. So, John, I'm sure there's going to be some questions coming back to you, but I hope, I could spend a lot more time sort of listening to what you had to say and sort of how you quickly moved to digitization, and then also some of the challenges, which I think likely to be shared by colleagues as well. So I'm gonna turn to you and turn to what was taking place in Armenia. And before we got on today, Armenia just recently had an election, so I congratulated him on sort of what looked like to be a free, fair, and transparent election, which was really important and a great example, not only regionally but globally. But I want to talk to you about, in the same thread of digitizing committee operations. We know that you were at the forefront of organizing online parliamentary hearings in the Standing Committee on Foreign Relations. Can you share a little bit about your experiences, your efforts to lead digitization operations, and how digitization impacted the ability of the committee to fulfill its mandate during a very difficult period that not only was COVID, but also you guys were, there was a very serious conflict taking place as well. And so COVID is one challenge, but conflicts can also deeply impact the work of parliamentarians and governments globally, both local and national levels. So can I turn it over to you? And thank you so much again
Thank you
for joining.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the IRI as well as the German Marshall Fund for organizing this amazing event. Can you hear me? Can I have a confirmation on that? One important aspect of our work when we went digital was kind of to understand what can the Foreign Relations Committee do for our citizens. It started during the COVID, the pandemic, and there were a lot of speculations whether the state or the government was effectively fighting the COVID. And, this was a terrain that was really not charted well. Nobody knew which government is doing better. Nobody knew what methods are better, but we kind of tried to understand that. So in order to bring kind of a parliamentary oversight, also public interest to a certain equilibrium, we decided that we are going to have an online discussion where ambassadors of Armenia to Georgia as well as to Iran. We don't have diplomatic relations with Turkey and Azerbaijan because they've been blockading Armenia and have aggressive posture on certain regional issues. We're explaining how these respective countries, Georgia and Iran, were dealing with the COVID and pandemic, and how their governments were doing it, and how they could help also some of the Armenian citizens or Armenian origin people, because we have a community in Iran as well as in Georgia, a sizable and rather old one, to travel to Armenia, to come back to Armenia, to get any information. Usually, one of those challenges was that the ambassadors are not under the spotlight. These are type of a public servant that in any country has certain secrecy, is working in their respective countries. There is an etiquette limitations. But we were able to kind of organize a very interesting hearing with these ambassadors, as well as experts or regional experts of the region on the thematic of how these countries tackle with the pandemic and kind of compare it with Armenia. So, and this was very useful because first our public got a glance in the working of the embassies of Armenia in Iran and in Georgia, which is really not often done. In fact, perhaps first time kind of zooming into that. Secondly, they understood what can be done if they want to travel from these countries to Armenia. Thirdly, it kind of brought a media attention. There was about, if I don't get the numbers wrong, and there were thousands of viewerships on different media platforms because the public interest was high, and also perhaps because people were confined to their homes during the pandemic. In terms of digitalization of the parliament and using more digital tools, I want also to congratulate both Amanda and Brittany for their work. I think it's important that the parliaments look into this because overall there will be a period where we, God forbid, we won't be able to attend to work. I don't know if there is a pandemic or other catastrophe that we don't really foresee. That can be helpful, that we have ways of digitalizing the work, voting, for example. But also I want to caution against, as although young parliamentarian, against too much of a digitalization, because I also understand that my being in the parliament, and I kind of want to challenge this overall zeitgeist that we have now, and voting there is also a way of respecting my job place and where I am. And I feel more secure there, more free to hold the government accountable than oftentimes when it is done online, because we cannot trace every parliamentarian and how they vote when they are at their places. So these are challenges also for the democracy in some ways that we need to really think over, because of course voting online and doing a lot of digital operations is useful, also connecting with the constituency, as the previous speaker said. During the Velvet Revolution, the social media became, especially Facebook, became extremely important in Armenia. Now every parliamentarian, every politician, every public figure, a singer, anybody, an artist is communicating through the Facebook in Armenia. And it's not going to change easily. And this has been a useful tool also for us to do this oversight and have the people's oversight over the legislative as well, because we are accountable to our constituency for what we do. And this is an important digital shift that we are witnessing it. It has been starting earlier on, but it was the COVID that accelerated it. But at the same time, we need to think of the ways that we can actually ensure cybersecurity when it comes with the voting and other stuff, because to me, voting should be taking place in the parliament, unless the parliament is not gone or something like that, because that's perhaps the only way you can actually ensure that the parliamentarian is voting based on its soul and its own beliefs. And I think we need to be cautious also about this opportunity, because every opportunity has its challenges and vice versa. Thank you again for having me. Those are my remarks. Should you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
So thank you, and for sharing with us your experience, your leadership efforts. I think you raised some really good points about both the positive aspects of digitization, born out of an extraordinarily tough time globally. There are obviously new ways digitization is changing how parliaments work, but also the need for transparency and accountability, and something about the importance of the type of face-to-face engagement that really matters. Parliaments, whether it's local and national, that maybe can't be replaced, but also this idea too, when we speak to Jihan about how sometimes digitization can really help, given especially if geographically and in times of challenging issues, can also be a real useful tool for those that are impacted, like migrants or those that are the most vulnerable. And I think what you pointed out too is this sharing of experiences to regional experiences. And I hope this will be part of the sort of legislative to legislative sharing of experiences. So I want to talk to somebody who's been sort of knee deep in this issue in Colombia. Jose Daniel, I want to just to bring you in, because I know that you've been leading a bill that seeks to implement remote sessions, remote voting, and mixed sessions. It's a lot of what Sos was just talking about. We heard also from Jihan too about the challenges and in Congress, in your Congress, as a response to the pandemic, that these are things that you've been leading, focused on. Maybe can you share a bit on sort of why you decided to lead this bill and how you crafted it, and then also how it's been received in Colombia. And again, thank you so much for joining and sharing your experiences in the middle of a busy time. So over to you.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'd like to thank as well to IRI, to GMF, and to my fellow members of Congress from different countries of the world, and also to all the people who are watching us at this time. Well, at first, I'd like to say that when we presented the bill, Congress was adjourned because of the pandemic. Not for a long term, but just for something like a week. But indeed, a Congress which is suspended, which is closed, is a huge risk for any democracy. So, and that was in a part because in the world, we didn't know basically nothing about pandemic and about the risks it was bringing. but also because we didn't have in Colombia law for this very unusual kind of circumstances. Constitution in Colombia is from 1991. And the law which gives the rules of Congress in Colombia is from 1992. So at that time, it was impossible to foresee a pandemic or all the digital and IT changes which have occurred during the last 30 years. So that was the challenge. And we were somehow like in a vicious circle where we couldn't session and we couldn't meet as members of Congress because we didn't have like the bench of law to meet in non-presential sessions, but also we had to meet and we had to session to create that law. And I guess in the rest of the countries which are here is the same, but passing a bill is not a quick matter. Passing a bill can take a long time. Usually it takes between 1 year and 2 years. So it's not that easy. And we had to start somehow. So Colombian government created a kind of law decree which allowed Colombian Congress to session remotely. And based on that, and based on the fact that, for example, courts were meeting and were working online, we finally decided to do it. But at the same time, we had to pass the bill, but we needed time to do it because of the rules of Congress. So like 2 weeks after the pandemic began, we put to consideration this bill. Any bill in Colombia requires 4 debates, 2 in each house. We have Senate and we have the House of Representatives. I am a member of the House of Representatives. And while Congress was debating the bill, it was after the 2 first debates, the Colombia's Constitutional Court said that the government's decree law that allowed remote sessions was unconstitutional. And I guess they were right, because at the end of the day, a government cannot create rules just with the signature of the president of the republic to define how can the Congress work. But fortunately, that decision of the court also said that we could keep working online, could keep meeting between us in a virtual way, but just because the court said it and not because the government was saying that. But also, that decision of Colombia's Constitutional Court had a very important and new element, and it has to do with what the other congressman who spoke before me was saying. And is that face-to-face deliberation, face-to-face meetings of the Congress are a better way to legislate than virtual or non-presential sessions in Colombian Congress. So, as a consequence, the utmost importance reforms, such as constitutional reforms or statutory laws, required a presential basis in order to be constitutional afterwards. So we had a big deal because we were in the middle of a pandemic. Most of congressmen and congresswomen didn't want to go to Bogota, which is our capital city. Many airports were closed at that time, but the court was asking us to meet in a presential basis, at least for this kind of reforms. This bill, to deepen there one moment, was basically creating 3 kinds of session in Colombian Congress. First, the traditional presential meetings. Second, the remote sessions, which were basically online, and third, the mixed sessions, which meant that some members of Congress could go to the physical place of Colombian Congress in the Capitolio in Bogota, but the rest of them could go online to these sessions. We managed to pass the law in the 4 debates, but there is a last step for passing laws in Colombian Congress, which is called conciliation. And it happens when the text approved in Senate is different to the text approved in the House of Representatives. So I was the member of Congress in charge of doing that job in the name of the House of Representatives. And I made the decision of assuming the text approved in the Senate, as long as that was the text, that was the bill that was more related, that was closer to the decision of the Constitutional Court. Unfortunately, the fellow members of the House of Representatives, the most of them, didn't agree with me, and they wanted somehow like a more open and less restrictive possibilities to meet online. The version we approved, the one that came from the Senate, was how can I say it, was much more demanding in terms of requiring presential participation of members of Congress. And finally, the bill didn't pass because of that and was denied in the very last step in the House of Representatives. Finally, I'd like to add that this is a very controversial issue in Colombia. The remote sessions were very well seen at the beginning because it was seen by public opinion as an alternative to a Congress which was closed. But after a few months, what showed up was that people outside the Congress didn't understand why workers were going to their jobs, why doctors, nurses were going to their jobs, and congressmen and congresswomen, which are, and we are particularly unpopular in Colombia, is the most unpopular institution in this country, and I guess it's pretty much the same in some other countries, why we had somehow the privilege to work online. So by now, things have changed. We don't have the law, and I think that's a pity, because the day we have another emergency, we will come back to discuss from point zero, how can we meet as a Congress? But in the practice, we have found a way to move on. Now we are, after some months where all Congress members were working remotely, we have passed to a mixed model where some of us work online and some others work in the place of Congress. And the legislative year will start in 4 days, July the 20th, and from July the 20th, the Colombian Congress will come back fully to presential sessions. So that's the way you have worked out this very particular moment of our history. I just expect this pass through the virtual tools and IT tools gives to Colombian Congress some better tools to work that makes Congress more open to citizens, that makes Congress more modern, more advanced in its process. But indeed, this has been a very complex circumstance, but fortunately, we will close this chapter of Congress history in Colombia in 4 days, when we will fully go back to presential sessions. So again, I'd like to say thanks for this invitation, and I hope we can answer some questions later.
Daniel, thank you for that. That was It sounds like an incredibly challenging time in Colombia, but also complex because there's obviously clearly different interests and different perspectives. And obviously, and I know a lot about differences between Senates and House of Representatives, having been through that myself in previous experience. I wanted to turn to Basira. And by the way, please, everybody, if you, as Daniel mentioned, questions, if you have any questions, please feel free to pose them to the Q&A function on Zoom. Basira, do we have you? I wanted to turn to you. Thank you so much again for joining from North Macedonia. I think you're in Skopje. So I hope, I think you've heard a lot of the discussion already. I'm sure it sounds probably familiar to you in many ways. It's the challenges, but maybe you could talk about from your perspective, both the obstacles of digitization of the assembly in North Macedonia, and also maybe share about some of the obstacles, but also lessons learned from the experience and how to help overcome these barriers. And I think, Jose Daniel, I think this is going to be I don't think this issue is going to end anytime soon in terms of how to do this. So I think you're probably going to be involved, all parliamentarians, in the middle of this issue in your respective countries. Sarah, can I turn to you to offer your thoughts?
Yes. Thank you very much, first of all, for this opportunity. But I have to say, I'm quite jealous of the previous speakers because they said that they had been able to work in a hybrid manner throughout this time of the pandemic, which was not something happening in the Assembly of North Macedonia. At the beginning of my, when I first joined actually the parliament last year in August, we were quite aware what was going to happen and how we are supposed to work in the time to come. And the Speaker of the Parliament, the President of the Parliament, actually proposed some changes to the rules of procedure so that when needed, we can work online, we can work in a hybrid manner, both the plenary sessions and the working bodies. But unfortunately, his suggestion was blocked with 3,000 amendments from the opposition. And they claim that working online in every sphere of the society was actually unconstitutional. So what I have with me is are some of the amendments that they proposed to the changes of the rules of procedure, by the opposition. One of them said that if we work during Easter holidays, each of the parliamentarians have to have a colored egg so that they can show in front of the camera, and that would be their ticket in. Another amendment actually says that if the assembly has to work over after 8 p.m., we all have to be dressed in pajamas. And the most interesting for me was that if a parliamentarian chooses to work remotely online, there was supposed to be no crying baby sounds in the background. And it was interesting because I was pregnant at the time when I became a member of parliament. So this was somehow pointed towards all women, not just me, because I was pregnant, but we are majority are women actually from the majority in the parliament. So that meant that while you're in parliament, if you want to work, this is something that you're not allowed to do, or you have to detach yourself from your children, put them in another room, in another house maybe, so that you can work online. So unfortunately, these changes actually never got to see the light of day. So I think that we are maybe one of the few parliaments that had to work with physical presence throughout this pandemic. So we adapted in the way of making frequent pauses, making frequent breaks, working a little bit more shortly, which actually resulted in delays of laws being voted on. So we tried to talk with the opposition because I come from the field of education. I'm a university professor, and in the education, it was so easy to change from physical presence to online teaching. Now we actually even adopted some new laws that put online teaching as a mode, not just during pandemic, but whenever there's a need, a teacher can teach online. if he has to go on some kind of field trip, or if he has to go to a conference, to a meeting, he can teach online. Actually, we invested a lot in these IT technologies, in modernizing the schools, modernizing the system, but our assembly is still working with physical presence. We are in middle of the summer, so if in the autumn we have some new tightening of the measures so that we can protect ourselves from COVID-19, we will still have to work with physical presence because our opposition won't withdraw the 3,000 amendments. The most interesting thing is that in every other working bodies, they connect online. So you know that we as parliamentarians, we are not just meant to work in the assembly, in plenary sessions, and working bodies, but we are part of delegations, we are part of groups for collaboration with other parliaments. They always connect online when we have those meetings. But when we have to work in our parliament, in our home country, when we have to deliver laws for the benefit of people and so we can improve certain things, they really do not want us to work online. I'm sure that you heard that we even had the time when we had to have 2 COVID positive MPs come into parliament because we had to vote on the 5th packet of economic measures that the government set for companies, private companies, state companies, small businesses, middle-sized businesses that really suffered a lot during the pandemic. So this was the 5th measure, and this 5th packet of measure, I'm sorry, and we had to vote on, but because we had 2 MPs that were positive to COVID-19, they kept delaying and delaying and delaying, and that packet of economic measures actually went on for 3 months until we had the 2 MPs come in and vote. So we had MPs being infected with COVID-19 all the time, so in and out. Still, we did not manage to overcome this issue, and the parliament still works with physical presence, which is not the case with any other institution. Now we're working on the digitalization of the judiciary system, but still the parliament is not working online. And that was a big lesson for us. So I think that now for next year, from 1st September on, maybe we'll try again to work with the opposition to withdraw those amendments so that we can still protect our health, protect the environment, protect everyone else around us, but still be functional, which I really hope that would be the case, because this went against all of human rights. We were locked in a way in parliament because someone thought that they had to make fun with the whole pandemic system. Like I said, every other aspect of society, every aspect of public administration is being digitalized or is completely digitalized, like the education and everything else. The medical system went through a lot of changes so that people don't have to leave their houses, that they can function from home. Everyone could function from home or in a hybrid manner, except for North Macedonia's parliament, because we had to stay in due to the 3,000 amendments.
Sarah, thank you. I think highlighting, obviously a very challenging situation, especially yes. when politics are at play, but also some of the issues that you raise on sort of gender. And also very, sort of dangerous for people going in as well. So I want to, I can sort of hear these similar threads through a lot of the conversation today. Natalie, can we turn to you? And I know we're running close to our time allotted. So what I hope to do, and please, if anybody has any questions, feel free to to raise them. And otherwise, what I may do is just go around to everybody and ask for final thoughts before we close. So Natalie, over to you.
Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here. My name is Natalie Arias. I'm very happy to share this panel with you and would like to extend my gratitude to Ivory for organizing this event. I am a newly elected legislator, and I ran my candidacy on behalf of CREO, the governing political party. The president of Ecuador, Mr. Guillermo Lasso, has been in power since May 24, 2021. In the past, among others, I worked as a legislative staffer and consequently, I'm able to compare congressional operations before and after COVID-19. As you probably know, Ecuador was among the hardest hit countries in the world as a result of the pandemic, especially in early 2020s. As of March 24, 2020, Ecuador National Legislature operate on the basis of virtual sessions, both at the plenary and the commissions, with live streaming and remote voting. Surprisingly, this occurred only 1 week after the country officially entered the emergency regime. Consequently, the legislature was instrumental in discussing pandemic-related issues, monitoring executive branch complaints of sanitary and health policies, and of course, conducting oversight activities. Legislators were very timely in determining political responsibilities for pandemic mishandling that led to censure and impeachment of key officials. As of May 24, 2021, the Ecuadorian Congress operates on a hybrid basis, combining virtual and physical attendance. And then an elected member of the legislature governing body called Consejo de la Administración Legislativa, and we approve regulations that sets the protocols and rules for the hybrid system. Needless to say, by our inauguration on May 24, 2021, Ecuador was struggling with a very low vaccination rate amid a second wave of COVID infections. Since Ecuador has had a 1-year successful trajectory of virtual operation at Congress, thanks to a very well equipped IT team, we were confident enough that the hybrid system was the most pragmatic way forward. While the plenary sessions require physical presence of the legislature's governing body members and the political party representative, other members of the Congress are free to attend if they comply with sanitary standards and COVID testing. Committees operation also follow the hybrid system, of course, yet with a higher degree of flexibility. Indeed, recent records show a higher rate of physical attendance over the 45 days. I welcome these results as they have enabled very meaningful discussions and swift responses to imminent needs. Since the pandemic, we have functioned diligently thanks to a combination of Zoom and NEDES applications that connect to the Curul Electrónica, a system operational since 2012. In summary, we enjoy a combination of hardware and software connectivity variables that enable the assembly to offer live streaming sessions, quorum verifications, and electronic voting systems. Also, transmission and storage of digital information and compulsory electronic signature norms. You know that it's important. We look forward to continue to operate under this model as we acknowledge that under the circumstances, it grants clear benefits. While complying with pandemic requirements, we have been able to hold key personal face-to-face discussions, critical to our work. In addition, we have extended our working hours considerably. Mondays, Fridays, even weekends are booked with regular meetings that it's necessary. It is early to start lasting conclusions, of course, of this unique experience. I will continue to do my best. I'm trying to pursue my political agenda that will hopefully contribute to a healthier future of our population here in Ecuador, economic freedom, higher social responsibility, and shared prosperity for my country. Thank you very much. I will welcome questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you for the sort of laying out some of the steps that were taken that overcome some deep challenges, and in multiple waves of the pandemic, and obviously critical to any government to get things that they need to get done, require the ability for all the parliamentarians who are here today to be able to do their work in a safe manner, safe, transparent, and effective manner. What I wanted to do right now, because we're really close to we're slightly over time. So what I thought I might do is maybe to just go back to the group again and ask you, I mean, you had an opportunity to listen in to your colleagues around the globe and the challenges that they face. And I was hoping that maybe you could just give you each 1 minute, maybe to just sort of talk about what you think should be the priorities when you think about parliaments and what they need to do in this age, whether it be digitization or challenges. So I want to give each one of you maybe a 1 minute to close out. Jihan, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll sort of go back down sort of the list. And again, just want to thank all of you. We probably need 2 to 3 hours plus more to even sort of get sort of below sort of on a number of these issues. So Jihan, can I send it over to you first, and then we'll go and we'll end with Natalie.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think I will use this opportunity to just highlight on some of the challenges that I couldn't previously. For most of us, many of our parliamentarians, one of the biggest challenge was digital literacy. That includes myself, because this was not we didn't come into office aware and knowing that digital literacy was a must-have skill for parliamentarians. But this is what this has really taught us, is that it really is mandatory. And moving forward, parliamentarians and the secretariats of parliaments and the leaderships will have to, I believe, undertake some exercises to ensure that that there's increased digital literacy, and ensure that parliamentarians can engage safely on digital platforms. Secondly, the issue was obviously ensuring online security. Oftentimes, while conducting online meetings, sometimes we are left wondering if if the person voting is actually the person who is supposed to be voting, and these are scary thoughts that as parliamentarians we've never had to think about before. And so as a rule, we've always had to have we've always had to ensure that whenever there was voting, the video was on, and then we had to make sure that the person voting is the person who is supposed to be voting. The third issue was obviously ensuring meaningful participation. What we have lost with digitization and digital forums to conduct parliamentary sessions or committees is the lack of meaningful participation. You can be online, but you might not be participating. And a lot of times, a lot of things that politicians do, us politicians do, is for the camera, is for the media, is for the people listening, is for the people tuning in. And that has decreased, or that is sometimes non-existent. And so in the absence of an audience, I felt that meaningful participation is often lost, especially on legislating and drafting legislations. It's a very difficult task to conduct digitally. And finally, I wanted to highlight the importance globally of all parliaments to push upon executives the need for affordable digital connectivity for all citizens. We as parliaments might have digital platforms to, or the means or the resources to conduct our sessions, but I mean, what is Parliament for if not for the people? And during this pandemic, not all the, many citizens have not had access to internet. It's not been affordable. People are not aware of what is happening in parliaments on a daily basis, unlike they would if it was, otherwise. So there is something to impress upon, and something that we need to take forward everywhere across the world is affordable. I would perhaps even say wherever possible, free digital connectivity for all citizens.
Thank you. I think those are all excellent recommendations. So I'm going to turn it over to you for just a quick 1 minute. I think you're on mute.
Oh, am I? Well, it's all up to the
good.
gods of the Zoom. Basically, very shortly, I want to echo to what my colleague has said, because it's very important that the digital gap between the citizens and the parliamentarians or the governments, for that matter, is not there or is filled in. We don't have that particular problem in Armenia. A lot of people do have an access to internet. But one thing that I again want to mention with all the digital stuff is the beauty of the real things that are then retranslated in the digital space. It's important to understand that if you have a good legislation, you have a good legislation, whether you do it online or offline, that doesn't make much difference. However, what is good with digitalization, I think one opportunity that it gives us is the archivization of the data. For example, I can go back and listen to that discussion that I told you about with the ambassadors, and that's very useful. That's something like a minutes that the internet is taking for you, or the cyberspace is taking for you. Thank you very much again for this important discussion. Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you, and sort of highlighting some of the positive, along with Jihan's suggestions on, I think, some key areas that need to be addressed to strengthen capacities and also security and online, ensuring basically parliamentary engagement, which is always can be challenging. Jose Daniel, can I turn to you just to pick up and just your final thoughts and a quick 1 minute.
Okay, no, I would only like to add what should be kept by Congress in the case of Colombia, but of course, worldwide. Once pandemic is gone and once the need of virtual sessions goes away. And in our very particular case, we should keep three things. First, the possibility, and not only a possibility, but almost the obligation of presenting amendments, of presenting proposals, of changes to the bills we discussed through email, through websites. That's very important, at least for two reasons. First, because this is the way how public can get to know them. But second, because of the easiness of our work. Before pandemic and before virtual sessions, when there was one amendment, we had to listen it very carefully, because that was the only way we could get to know it in real time. Now it's different, because you get it in your email and your staff gets it. So that's the first thing we should keep. In second place, all the sessions of Congress, not only the full meeting of all the members of Congress or of each chamber, but all the meetings of Congress are now broadcasted by YouTube. And that's very important in terms of transparency, in terms of public access to information produced by Congress, and that should keep on and should be something that could remain after pandemic. And in third term, we have a figure which allows in some Congress sessions to listen to people, not to congressmen, not to congresswomen, but to people interested in a given bill to express their point of view about that bill. We call it public audiences. And before pandemic, it was very difficult to listen to all the people from different parts of the country because they had to come to Bogota to express their ideas. Now, thanks to virtual sessions, we should keep doing public audiences through virtual media so that they can keep expressing their points of view without having to travel from one city to other, in most of the cases through airplane, to express their points of view. So I think it has been a very difficult time, a very challenging circumstance from the legal point of, from the political point of view, but it is leaving us some changes that should remain all the time. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And capturing those changes, the positive ones, are going to be important. I hear some of them sort of being said over and over again too. And so I think that's really important. Becerra, can one last 1 minute from you as well, and then you can be on your way wherever you're driving to. So sending over to you for final thoughts.
Yeah, I think that what we learned actually from this pandemic is that working online is increasing the availability of people from regardless if you're living in the capital or in another town. For example, from now I'm on my way home because I don't live in the capital. I'm on my way home. So I think that we have to put much more effort into making parliaments working online available, because it gives the opportunity and the sense for everyone to be able to participate, so that you can hear everyone's opinion, everyone's voice, everyone's speech, everyone's thought on some amendments or on some laws, and he or she gets the comfort of not to have to leave the house, because we are human beings. We are facing with all kinds of different situations, like not just with the pandemic. So I think that we really have to work a little bit more to have this opportunity to digitalize the parliament, the legislative process, voting on laws and everything else, which, like I said, is something that must not be blocked by politics or by some other interest, but in the interest of everyone, and so that there's no time gap between one law to another and to another, just because of political views and political issues, etc. If we could do that so quick with education, I'm quite aware that and certain that we can do that with parliaments and with lawmaking and with voting and with presence. But politics has to probably stay out of this whole process. From my experience, that's what I can say.
Thank you. And I take your point, and I think really important is making parliaments and democracy work for the people. Seems to be is a part of the reasons why you see low numbers, of parliamentarians at times too, but not only just parliamentarians, but also governments as well. And I know that's I think a major theme that we hear in the United States right now from our current president and from many in Parliament too, that we've lost that ability to really project and ensure that it's working for the people.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely agree with you. Nathalie, can we bring you into you get the final word, and you have such great experience, and I've also had some success. Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with today about how to make certain that in a new world of challenges that parliaments can work for the people?
Someone said before, we work in the probably the most understood institution in our country, so we have to deal with that. Now we have to, I would like to say that we were working before COVID-19 on, for example, Facebook and YouTube live streaming. So we were done that, but our low credibility, it's working against us on that. So we have to work more on transparency. We have to work more than using our resources of open parliament, that we're working on that. So as now we have a new challenge here in Ecuador, the rest of the world. We have to confront the Delta COVID variant that have arrived recently. Of course, as other countries in a different front, we have to work on cybersecurity threats. We are trying to prepare to this new variant Delta. It makes a little bit harder to work on that economic reforms that we like to work on. So this is the kind of challenge we have right now. Everything it's working on the other part. I'm trying to refer to the IT system, but we have to work on the very important topics here in Ecuador, all related to the reactivation and economic standards. So we have a lot of work here.
Well, yeah, no doubt. And I think the Delta variant, which we haven't really talked about because we're focused on sort of the work. It's like as if new things keep popping up that keep pushing these issues and making them continuously to be relevant, even in countries that may have high vaccination rates too, that we're all sort of dealing with these new waves. With that said, thank you for all these comments. Not enough time. I know each one of you is busy, is likely to, as soon as you jump off this call, get back to either sort of working parliamentary, doing stuff at home, or doing, or engaging, directly on the topics that we've been discussing. I wish everybody sort of well and sort of picking up, where you are and sort of pushing ahead. Also, a big thank you to Brittany and Amanda for this report, the Playbook, for IRI for its leadership in these areas, and GMF is proud to be part of this effort. And I know this is sort of 1.0, but there are likely to be 2.0 of the Playbook that you all will be feeding into. And I think sharing best practices, challenges, and raising red flags is really important. And I don't think there's one parliament globally that has gotten this absolutely right yet. And so I hope that we're in a better moment when it isn't the middle of a pandemic to work on these things. But I wanted to just thank all of you again and wish you all a good rest of your day, a good morning, a good afternoon, a good evening, and looking forward to our next conversation with all of you. And drive safely, Becerra, please. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.